Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Charles. Welcome back to the closet for week 2 of our series, A Legacy of Faith. We are talking about roadblocks and stop signs. So today we're talking about the obstacles that may hinder or even put a pause to our faith. I want to make sure that as we continue walking in this series, we are set up for success. I believe God wants us to prosper in the things that He's called us to. And when I say prosper, I'm not talking about Benzes and cars and houses. I'm just saying He wants us to grow spiritually and develop spiritually. You'll see a theme begin to present itself in His teaching, specifically that we're following along in the life of Abraham. From the beginning of his introduction to God, his meeting with God, all the way to the end of his life. We're largely going to be coming out of two places. Genesis 12, I know we started there last week, so we're going to continue in Genesis 12 in verse 4. Then we're also going to look at Genesis 13. Genesis 12:4. So Abram left as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. So the first obstacle in our faith would be a lack of obedience or partial obedience. As we look at Abraham, he brought everything with him. He brought his possessions, he brought his family, he brought his business, the people that it says that he acquired. So everything that was under his control, everything that was a part of his life, he brought with him. And if we're going to be successful in our faith, if we're going to have a passionate, intimate relationship with God, it's going to require us giving everything to it. I saw a commercial with Blake Griffin the other day. At the end of the commercial, Blake says, in order to be great, you have to fall in love with the process. This is the first step in the process with God. When we want to walk and move on to greater things with God, move on to influence, move on to affecting our families, our communities, raising godly children, having a godly marriage, obtaining the promises of God, it requires a full devotion. It requires everything that we have, everything that's within us, everything that we possess to be surrendered to the will of God. Obstacle number 2 in our faith, roadblock number 2, stop sign number 2, is having expectations. When we expect God to do something for us that He has not previously placed on our heart or spoken to us to do, we are setting up that thing, whatever it is, above our relationship with Him. God doesn't work in second place. I spend a lot of time in prison. I spend a lot of time corresponding with inmates through mail. The one thing that I often say unapologetically is, if you give your life to Christ, when you give your life to the Lord, that does not automatically mean you will be free. That does not mean tomorrow a lawyer's going to come and set you free. I don't want to sell that false expectation to you. The enemy would want to do nothing more than to place this roadblock in your life. Jesus actually said, in this life you will have tribulation. It's just a part of living in a fallen world. We have sickness, we have disease, but God is still in control. I know there are areas of our lives that we feel like He's not controlled, and the first reaction is to go back and say and point the finger at God and say, where were you? Why didn't you do blank? And that's an opportunity for us to set up a false expectation, and that's just going to hinder us. That's going to stop everything that we're doing, because we're absolutely putting our understanding of life and of situations above what God wants to do for us and in us, and sometimes above what He's actually doing. Hopping over to Hebrews 11:8, we have a further account of Abraham and his obedience to God. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. Abraham had no expectation of God except what God said to him. And if we're going to be effective in walking with God and obtaining His promises, we need to rely on His word. Moving on to Genesis 13, we want to wrap up today's video with our last roadblock, and that is relationship strife. Genesis 13:8. So Abram said to Lot, let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herdsmen and mine, for we are brothers. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. One of the biggest, if not the biggest, obstacle in our faith, roadblock in our faith, is relationship strife. Abram and Lot had grown so big with possessions that the land couldn't sustain the both of them. Lot's herdsmen and Abraham's herdsmen began to argue and bicker and fight. And in the midst of this, Abraham said, "Look, bro, we're brothers. Wherever you go, I'll go the opposite. Let us live in peace instead of fighting and living in strife." Psalm 133 and 1 is a great example of this. How good and pleasant it is when brothers live together in unity. It is like precious oil poured on the head, running down on the beard, running down on Aaron's beard, down upon the collar of his robes. It is as if the dew of Hermon were falling on Mount Zion. For there the Lord bestows his blessing, even life forevermore. Relationships are huge, huge in our walk with God. The people that we have around us, the people that we have speaking into our lives, the people that we're in relationship with, our spouse, the relationship with our spouse, these are the biggest areas of our faith when it comes to roadblocks and obstacles. We have to have people that are following and encouraging us to hear God, to walk with God, to be in relationship with God. And anyone that is pulling us away from this voice is not walking with us in unity. The Bible said that this place of unity, at this place of walking together as brothers, is where God commands his blessing. I wonder how many of us aren't experiencing the full blessing of walking with God because of one of these three roadblocks. Florence Chadwick was a world-class swimmer, and she was the first woman to swim from England to France through the English Channel. One year, she decided to swim from the Catalina Islands to California, which is roughly 26 miles. 15 hours into her journey, she wasn't harassed by sharks, she wasn't tired, but a fog had settled on the water, and this fog began to hinder her vision. And in a boat paddling next to her was her mother. As she continued her swim, she told her mother that she was ready to quit. And 15 hours into her swim, she got back in the boat. As she got back in the boat and they moved through the fog, they realized that she was less than a mile away from the shore of California. I would hate to think that you and I were that close in receiving the promises of God, in receiving the marriage that we've so been praying about, or having a family or friend come to know Jesus in an exciting way. Take some time, ask the Lord to examine your heart and reveal any obstacles that we spoke about today. As always, I would love to hear from you. Leave me comments in the comment section or shoot me an email if you have any questions. Grace and peace.